Tom stood near the kitchen island, arms folded tightly across his chest. The tension in the house felt thick enough to choke on. The soft electric hum of Jeffrey's power chair filled the hallway as he rolled into the living room, stopping in front of his parents. His face already looked nervous. "Dad," Jeffrey said carefully, "what happened?" Tom rubbed a hand over his face. "Jeffrey, don't get mad." "That usually means something bad," Jeffrey muttered. "Just say it." Dea sat on the couch clutching a blanket in her lap. Her eyes already looked apologetic. Tom finally said it. "You know how you said you never wanted to end up anywhere Sam controls? Camp Toby, group homes, programs." Jeffrey's stomach dropped instantly. Tom continued quietly, "Sam has influence over almost every placement network in Georgia." Silence. Jeffrey stared at him like the words physically hurt. "No," he whispered. Tom nodded once. "Yeah." Jeffrey's hands clenched on the controls of his chair. "So if APS pulls something again," he said slowly, voice shaking, "he could place me anywhere he wants." Tom didn't answer fast enough. That was answer enough. "Fuck my life," Jeffrey snapped, slamming his hand against the armrest. Dea flinched slightly. "Sorry, son." Jeffrey backed his chair away a few inches, panic rising in his chest. "No, no, 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 you told me I was safe here." "You are safe here," Tom said quickly. "For now," Jeffrey fired back. The room went silent again. Jeffrey looked down at the thick ABDL-style onesie he wore under his hoodie, suddenly feeling smaller than he already did. The medical padding under him crinkled softly as he shifted in the chair. Usually the sounds didn't bother him around family anymore. Now it made him feel trapped. Dea moved closer carefully. "Honey, listen to me, nobody's taking you tonight." "But they could," Jeffrey whispered. Tom exhaled heavily. "That's why we're figuring this out before Sam tries anything." Jeffrey laughed bitterly. "Sam always tries something." Tom didn't disagree. Rain tapped against the windows outside, while the house stayed painfully quiet. Finally Jeffrey spoke again, softer this time. "What if I lose everything again?" Dea knelt beside his chair, resting a hand gently on his arm. "Then we fight again," she said, "every single time." Jeffrey looked away, eyes watering. "I'm tired of fighting." Tom's voice cracked slightly. "I know, buddy." For a moment nobody moved. Then Dea carefully reached for the side bag hanging off Jeffrey's chair. "You haven't had your nighttime meds yet," she said gently, "and I think you're overwhelmed." Jeffrey didn't argue. That alone scared Tom more than the yelling had. Dea handed him his bottle of water while Tom quietly locked the front door, like somehow that tiny action could keep the entire outside world away from his son for one more night. The doorbell rang just as Tom was helping Jeffrey get cleaned up in the bathroom attached to his room. Jeffrey groaned softly. "Who even comes over this late?" Before Tom could answer, Josh sprinted down the hallway and yanked the front door open. A huge man stood outside, broad shoulders, heavy beard, worn hoodie soaked from the rain. Josh said bluntly, "Does Jeffrey Smith live here? I'm Max." Josh blinked, then shouted across the house at full volume. "Dad, Mom, Jeffrey, a big guy named Max is looking for Jeffrey." From down the hall Jeffrey immediately yelled back. "Josh, Dad is cleaning me up right now. I can meet with him in the living room, walk him there, and for the love of God stop calling people fat straight to their face." Josh frowned. "You know what I meant." The giant man at the door suddenly laughed. "Yeah," Max said, "trust me kid, I've heard worse." Josh stepped aside awkwardly. "Sorry." Max walked inside slowly, glancing around the house. Tom emerged from the hallway a moment later carrying a small laundry bag while Dea followed behind him with fresh supplies for Jeffrey. The second Tom saw the man, his expression hardened instantly. "You are Max Turner," the man answered calmly. Tom's eyes narrowed at the last name. "Turner." Max nodded once. "Yeah, Sam Turner's brother." The atmosphere in the house changed immediately. Dea stiffened. Josh looked confused. "Wait, the evil Sam." "Josh," Dea warned. "What, he is evil?" Max surprisingly snorted at that. "Honestly, fair." Tom still didn't relax. "Why are you here?" Max rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "I used to work at Camp Toby," he explained. I was one of Jeffrey's counselors before Sam fired me. Jeffrey's power chair hummed from the hallway before he finally rolled into view wearing soft sweatpants and a loose hoodie. His damp hair showed he had clearly been in the middle of getting ready for bed. The second Jeffrey saw Max, his eyes widened. "No way." Max smiled softly. "Hey kid." Jeffrey stared for another second before pointing at him. "You're the counselor that got suspended for screaming at Sam in the dining hall." Josh's jaw dropped instantly. "You screamed at Sam and survived." "Barely," Max replied. Tom crossed his arms. "What exactly happened?" Max's expression darkened. "Sam cornered Jeffrey during one of his panic episodes," he said quietly. "Wouldn't let him leave the cafeteria until he learned compliance." Jeffrey was crying so hard he nearly threw up. Jeffrey looked down silently. Max continued, anger creeping into his voice. "I stepped between them and told Sam he was acting like a damn prison guard instead of camp staff." "And he fired you?" Dea asked. "Oh yeah," Max replied, "said I was emotionally compromising residents." Jeffrey muttered bitterly, "That sounds like Sam." Max looked directly at Jeffrey then. "When I heard he was trying to get control over placements again, I figured somebody should warn you." Tom's face tightened. "You know something." Max nodded slowly. "Sam's angry," he admitted. "He thinks Jeffrey embarrassed him after the hearings and APS investigations. He's been calling favors." A cold silence filled the living room. Jeffrey's grip tightened on his chair controls. "I knew it," he whispered. But Max added firmly, "I didn't come here to scare you." He reached into his jacket pocket and handed Tom a folded envelope. "I came because there are still people willing to stand against him." The front door burst open before anyone could react. Two APS workers stepped inside beside Pat. Josh's face immediately fell. "Grandma." Pat didn't even look at him at first. Her expression was cold, professional. "Jeffrey Smith," Pat said firmly, holding a folder against her chest. "Since you and your family have not complied with the new state placement compliance law regarding dependent adults who have spent extended periods in institutional or group home care." Tom stepped forward instantly. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" Pat ignored him and continued reading. "And because no approved long-term placement has been secured, APS has determined your current caregivers may not be providing the legally required level of structured support." Jeffrey froze in his power chair. The room went dead silent except for the soft hum of his chair motor. Josh looked horrified. "Grandma." Pat finally looked at him. "Just business." Josh stared at her like he didn't even recognize her anymore. Tom's voice cracked with disbelief. "Mom." One of the APS workers cleared her throat awkwardly. "Mr. Smith, this does not mean immediate removal." "Bullshit," Max snapped from the corner of the room. Everyone turned. Pat's eyes widened slightly when she noticed him. "Max." "Funny seeing you here," Max said darkly. Sam too scared to come himself. Pat's jaw tightened. "This has nothing to do with Sam." Max laughed once. "Sure." Jeffrey's breathing started getting shaky. Dea immediately moved beside his chair. "Honey, breathe." But Jeffrey wasn't listening anymore. "They're taking me," he whispered. "No, they are not," Tom said firmly. Pat looked at Jeffrey then, and for a split second guilt flickered across her face. "Jeffrey, if you enter a structured placement willingly, this can stay civil." Jeffrey looked up slowly, hurt written all over his face. "You picked them over me." Pat swallowed hard. "This isn't personal." "It is to me," Jeffrey shouted. His voice cracked so sharply the whole room flinched. "I'm your grandson." The APS workers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Tom stepped directly between Pat and Jeffrey now. "You are not removing my son from this house." Pat's expression hardened again, almost like she had to force herself back into business mode. "The court can if necessary." Max suddenly stepped forward. "Then maybe the court should hear how Sam Turner manipulates placements for retaliation." Pat looked rattled for the first time. "Careful, Max." "No," Max shot back, "I'm done being careful." Jeffrey's hands trembled violently on the controls of his chair. "I can't go back," he whispered. "Please don't make me go back." Dea crouched beside him immediately, gripping his hand. "You're not alone," she said softly. Josh moved beside his brother too, glaring at Pat through tears. "You always said family matters," Josh said shakily. "Guess that was a lie." That hit harder than anything else in the room. Pat visibly flinched. For the first time since arriving, she looked less like an official, and more like a grandmother realizing exactly what she was destroying. Pat's voice became colder, sharper, like she was forcing herself not to feel anything. "Guys," she said to Tom and Dea, "do this the easy way." Tom stared at her in disbelief. Pat continued, "If you refuse compliance, then Josh and Linda will also be referred to CPS." Josh's face went pale instantly. "What? You can't be serious," Dea whispered. Pat looked directly at them now. "Tom, Dea, if APS determines you knowingly violated placement law and obstructed intervention, both of you could be arrested." The words hit the room like a bomb. Jeffrey immediately panicked. "No, no, no." Pat raised her voice slightly toward the APS workers standing frozen near the doorway. "Don't make this harder on yourselves," she ordered. "You two, stop standing there and do your jobs." Neither worker moved at first. One finally spoke quietly. "Ms. Turner, he's clearly medically fragile and emotionally distressed." "And legally noncompliant," Pat snapped. Jeffrey backed his chair away instinctively, breathing faster now. "You're threatening my family because of me," he whispered. Tom started. "No," Jeffrey shouted suddenly, "this is exactly what Sam does." Max nodded grimly from the wall. "Yep." Josh moved protectively in front of Jeffrey's chair despite clearly being terrified himself. "You're not taking him." Pat's expression cracked for half a second. "Josh, move." "No. Joshua. No." The sudden scream stunned everyone. Tears rolled down Josh's face now. "You don't do this to family." Pat closed her eyes briefly like the words physically hurt. Dea wrapped an arm around Jeffrey's shoulders as his panic spiraled harder. His padded clothing crinkled faintly as he shook, completely overwhelmed. Tom's fists clenched at his sides. "You're threatening my children," he said quietly. Pat looked at him with exhausted eyes. "I'm trying to stop this before the state escalates it further." "You are the escalation," Max growled. One APS worker finally stepped forward carefully. "Jeffrey," she said gently, "nobody wants to physically force you tonight." Jeffrey laughed bitterly through tears. "That's supposed to make me feel better." The worker hesitated because honestly, she had no good answer. Then Jeffrey suddenly looked at Tom. His voice became very small. "Dad, if I go willingly, will they leave Josh alone?" Tom's face completely fell apart. "Buddy, will they?" Nobody answered immediately. That silence was devastating enough. Jeffrey looked down at his shaking hands. "Okay," he whispered weakly, "then I'll go." "No," Josh yelled instantly. Dea started crying. Tom looked ready to explode. But Jeffrey just sat there in his power chair looking utterly defeated, like the fight had finally been ripped out of him. Pat straightened the folder in her hands, trying to regain control of the room. "This has nothing to do with Samuel," she said firmly. "This is the new law signed by the governor." Max immediately scoffed from the corner. "Funny how Sam always benefits from these laws." Pat ignored him. "The state changed dependency placement regulations after several abuse investigations involving unlicensed family care situations," she continued. "Adults with extended institutional histories now require certified structured oversight if placement stability cannot be proven." Tom stared at her. "You sound like a damn brochure." "I'm telling you the truth." "The truth," Josh snapped. "You just threatened CPS on us." Pat's composure cracked slightly. "Because I don't want this becoming worse than it already is." Jeffrey sat frozen in his power chair, eyes red from crying. "So what?" he said hollowly. "The government just decides I can't live with my family anymore." One APS worker quietly answered this time. "It's not supposed to work like that." Pat shot the worker a sharp glare. But the woman continued carefully. "The law was intended for severe neglect cases and unsafe dependency situations." Max folded his arms, and Sam's using it to sweep people into placements he controls. Pat turned toward him instantly. "Stop saying his name like he controls the entire state." "He controls enough." The silence afterward was ugly. Jeffrey looked toward Pat again, hurt written all over his face. You really believe this is helping me? Pat opened her mouth but hesitated. For the first time since entering the house, she looked uncertain. I believe, she said slowly, that if APS flags this house as non-compliant and you resist intervention, the system will crush all of you. Tom shook his head. So your answer is surrender. My answer is survival. No, Jeffrey whispered. Everyone looked at him. Tears slid down his face again as he gripped the controls of his chair tightly. Survival would have been somebody protecting me the first time. That hit the room hard enough nobody spoke for several seconds. Even Pat looked shaken by it. Josh moved beside Jeffrey again, gripping the back of his brother's chair protectively. We're not letting them send you somewhere bad. Jeffrey gave a weak laugh. You can't stop the government, Josh. Tom suddenly stepped forward. Maybe not, he said quietly, but they're going to hear us before they take one damn step with my son. Pat's shoulders sagged for the first time all night. To be honest, she admitted quietly, they're on my ass too. The room fell silent. Pat looked exhausted now instead of authoritative. I don't want to do this. Tom stared at his mother in disbelief, then stop. You know I can't. Max muttered darkly, there's always a choice. Pat ignored him and looked toward the APS workers standing awkwardly by the doorway. Guys, she said tiredly, get the stretcher. Jeffrey's entire body stiffened instantly. No. The word came out sharp, terrified. One of the workers hesitated. Ms. Turner, he's already in a powered mobility device. The transport order says medical support transfer, Pat interrupted weakly. Jeffrey looked like he might be sick. You're putting me on a stretcher, he whispered. Dea immediately moved in front of him protectively. Absolutely not. Tom stepped beside her, nobody is touching him. But the workers slowly disappeared back toward the van outside anyway. Josh panicked. No, 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 no. Jeffrey started backing his chair away quickly, hands shaking so badly he nearly hit the hallway wall. I said no. The fear in his voice was raw now. Max stepped closer carefully, trying not to scare him further. Jeffrey, hey, look at me. Jeffrey couldn't. They're gonna strap me down again, he gasped. Dad. Tom's expression broke instantly because he knew exactly what memory Jeffrey was reliving. No one is strapping you down, Tom said firmly. But Jeffrey was already spiraling. I can't breathe. Dea grabbed his hand, honey, stay with me. Pat looked horrified now, like the reality of the situation was finally crashing into her. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. Josh rounded on her furiously. Then why did you come here? Pat didn't answer. The back doors of the APS van opened outside. A stretcher rolled up the front walkway. Jeffrey made a sound somewhere between a sob and a panic-stricken laugh. Oh my God. Tom turned toward the doorway, rage finally boiling over. You roll that thing into my house and I swear to God. One APS worker spoke gently but carefully. Sir, please don't make threats. You brought a damn stretcher for my son. The worker looked miserable. We were told he might resist transport. Jeffrey shouted from across the room. Because I don't want a GO. The entire house went silent after that scream. Even the APS workers looked shaken now. Jeffrey curled inward in his power chair, trembling violently while Dea held onto him. Pat covered her mouth briefly, eyes watering. Max looked at her coldly. This is the part Sam never sees, he said quietly, the damage afterward. The tension in the house snapped the moment the front door opened again. A sharply dressed man stepped inside with two security aides behind him. I'm the mayor, he said firmly, scanning the room. Pat, go home, I've got this. Pat visibly exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Thank you. But no one else relaxed. Tom stepped forward immediately. You're not taking anyone from this house. The mayor raised a hand. Tom Smith, Dea Smith, you are now both detained pending review for obstruction of a state welfare placement order. Dea froze. What? Tom's face went pale. You can't be serious. The mayor continued, CPS will be here tomorrow. The children are being secured in temporary protective supervision. Josh grabbed onto Jeffrey's chair instantly. No. Jeffrey's breathing spiked again. Josh, don't. Max stepped forward fast. I can watch Josh and Linda. The mayor turned to him sharply. And who are you? Max didn't hesitate. Max Turner, Sam Turner's brother. That name finally made the mayor pause. Sam Turner, he repeated. Max nodded, the same one who's been manipulating placements and agencies for years. The mayor frowned. I don't know a Samuel Turner. Max's expression tightened. Then you're about to. The mayor's tone hardened. You think I take orders from someone I've never heard of? Max took a step closer. You already did, you just didn't know it. A beat of silence. Then the mayor turned slightly toward his aides. Detain Tom and Dea, secure the miners. Tom snapped, over my dead body. Jeffrey suddenly spoke from his chair, voice shaking but sharp. Wait, stop. Everyone turned to him. His hands were trembling on the controls, but his voice cut through the room. You're not solving anything, he said, you're just tearing everyone apart. The mayor looked at him briefly. You will be transported for evaluation, Jeffrey Smith. Max stepped forward again, anger rising. He's disabled, not dangerous. The mayor replied flatly, which is why this is being handled under protective statute. Max scoffed, protective statute, Sam is laughing somewhere right now. The mayor narrowed his eyes. You're very confident about this Samuel Turner. He's the reason half these placements exist, Max said. He's been behind it for years. The mayor hesitated for the first time. Jeffrey's voice broke slightly. I don't want to go. Dea started crying openly now. Please don't take him. Tom stood between Jeffrey and the officers. You're not touching my son. The room erupted into overlapping voices, arguments, panic, fear. And through it all, Jeffrey stayed frozen, gripping his chair like it was the only thing keeping him anchored. Max looked at the mayor one last time, low and steady. If you do this, he said, you better be ready for what Sam Turner really is. The mayor didn't respond immediately. For the first time, doubt flickered in his expression. The mayor's expression hardened as the room erupted into chaos. That's enough. His voice cut through everything. He pointed toward Tom, Dea, and Max. Arrest the 3 able-bodied adults for obstruction. Tom immediately stepped forward. This is insane. An officer grabbed his arm. Dea cried out, reaching for him, Tom. Max didn't resist at first, just stared at the mayor like he was memorizing him. This is exactly how Sam wins, Max said quietly as he was restrained, every time. Josh went rigid, pulling closer to Jeffrey's chair. No, don't take them. Jeffrey's breathing turned shallow again. Josh, stay back. But it was already happening too fast. One group of officers escorted Tom and Dea out, despite their protests. Another team moved toward Josh and Linda, speaking in controlled, rehearsed voices about temporary protective custody and safety placement. Josh fought to stay near Jeffrey until the last second. Jeffrey, don't let them. I'm trying, Jeffrey shouted, voice cracking. And then Josh was pulled away down the hallway. Jeffrey went still. Josh, he whispered. The house felt emptier instantly. The mayor turned toward Jeffrey now. And you, he said firmly, will be transported under APS supervision for immediate evaluation and placement. Jeffrey's hands trembled on the controls of his chair. I didn't do anything, he said, barely audible. Max, being led out, twisted his head back one last time. Find Sam Turner, he said sharply, before he does this to someone else. Then he was gone. The room settled into a harsh, unnatural quiet. Only Jeffrey remained seated in the living room now, surrounded by professionals and paperwork and decisions he didn't understand anymore. Dea's voice echoed faintly from outside. Tom shouting his name once. Josh calling for him down the hall. Then silence. The mayor looked at Jeffrey with a practiced, emotionless tone. Let's go. Jeffrey stared forward for a long moment, frozen. Then very slowly, his chair made a soft mechanical sound as it adjusted. And he rolled forward, into a system he couldn't see the end of yet. The mayor didn't find Sam the way Max expected. There was no dramatic confrontation, no smug victory waiting on the other side of a door. Instead, it was paperwork first. Then interviews. Then phone calls that suddenly stopped sounding confident. By the time Sam Turner was located, the tone in the mayor's office had changed completely. "Samuel Turner," the mayor said flatly, "you are being placed under emergency protective restriction pending full investigation into placement abuse, coercion, and misuse of dependency systems." Sam sat in a wheelchair across from him, hands folded tightly, expression unreadable. Max stood in the corner of the room, arms crossed, watching. Sam let out a quiet breath. "So that's it?" "No," the mayor replied, "it's the beginning." Sam gave a faint, tired smile. "You finally listened." Max stepped forward immediately. "Don't you dare act like this was the plan." The mayor ignored him and continued reading. "You will be transferred to a secured group home environment under state supervision. No administrative authority, no placement control, no contact with pending cases." Sam tilted his head slightly. A long pause. Then softly, "Thank you for helping clean this up." The words landed wrong in the room. Cold, detached. Max's jaw tightened. "You don't get to say thank you." The mayor shut the folder. "This is not about gratitude, it's about control being removed from someone who abused it." Sam didn't react much, just nodded once like he expected it. As aides prepared to escort him out, Max spoke again, quieter now. "You did this to a lot of people." Sam finally looked at him. "I know." That was all he said. No denial, no fight, no explanation. Just acceptance as he was taken from the room. Outside, the system kept moving, reassessing placements, undoing orders, untangling what had been done under his influence. And for the first time, the weight in the room wasn't fear. It was what comes after it, figuring out what stability actually looks like when the control is gone. The mayor stood near the doorway, watching the last of the chaos settle into uneasy silence. Max stepped forward immediately. "Now I need to know what happens to Jeffrey." The mayor didn't answer right away. He looked down at the folder in his hands, then back up. "I will keep the current placement order in place for now," he said carefully. Max's expression tightened. "Jeffrey is not coming out of this system and into another one that Sam built." The mayor raised a hand slightly. "That's not what I'm authorizing." Max's voice sharpened. "Then explain it." The mayor exhaled. "Jeffrey Smith is still classified as a dependent adult requiring structured support due to disability-related care needs." Max nodded once. "Yes." "That means," the mayor continued, "he cannot be released without an approved caregiver plan or verified safe home placement." Max's eyes narrowed. "So you're saying if there's no approval he stays in state care?" The mayor didn't sugarcoat it. "Correct." A heavy pause fell between them. Max shook his head slightly. "That's not protection, that's containment." The mayor's tone stayed controlled. "It's legal responsibility." Max stepped closer. "He was in a home with family." "A home under investigation for noncompliance and alleged coercion exposure," the mayor replied. "Until that is resolved, I cannot authorize release." Max clenched his jaw. "So what now?" The mayor finally softened his tone slightly. "Now we stabilize the situation, review every placement decision, strip authority from anyone who manipulated the system, including Samuel Turner's network, and reassess Jeffrey under independent oversight." Max let out a breath through his nose. "And Jeffrey?" The mayor looked him directly in the eye. "He is not being released today." Max's shoulders dropped slightly, anger still there, but now mixed with something heavier. "Then make sure tomorrow isn't just another version of the same cage," he said quietly. The mayor didn't respond immediately. But he didn't disagree either. The assistant in the mayor's office stepped in quickly, folder open and voice clipped with urgency. "Sir, we've got a situation update," she said. "There are over 300 additional disabled individuals currently in group homes whose caregivers are now being arrested for noncompliance with the new statute." The room tightened instantly. Max's head snapped up. 300. The assistant nodded. "Yes." Multiple counties flagged simultaneous enforcement failures tied to placement authorization requirements. The mayor didn't look surprised. "Good," he said simply. Max froze. "Good." The mayor turned slightly toward him. "It means the system is finally being enforced consistently." Max's voice rose. You think this is justice, you just destabilized hundreds of lives overnight. The mayor's expression stayed controlled. I enforced a law passed by the state legislature. Max stepped closer, anger breaking through. And you think that makes it right? You think I'm just supposed to give up my brother because of paperwork? The mayor held his gaze. Your brother is not an exception to statute. Max's jaw clenched hard. You're hiding behind law while people get torn apart. A long silence followed. Then the mayor spoke again, quieter but firm. Turners are not dumb after all, he said, almost like an observation rather than a judgment. Max narrowed his eyes. What's that supposed to mean? It means, the mayor replied, that every system has patterns, and people who understand them either exploit them or get caught in them. Max didn't answer. For the first time, he looked less like someone fighting the system, and more like someone realizing how big it actually was. And somewhere beyond that office, the consequences of those decisions were already moving through every placement, every home, and every life caught inside it. Pat stepped into the room slower than before, like her authority had finally worn off at the edges. She didn't look at the mayor this time, she looked at Max. Max, I didn't want to do that, she said quietly. The mayor told me I had to. Max let out a short, humorless laugh. You don't get to hide behind him. Pat flinched slightly. I had no choice. Max's voice sharpened. You always have a choice, you just don't like the cost of it. Pat swallowed hard. I'm going to be arrested too, I didn't want this. Max shook his head. That's not what you were worried about back there. Pat's eyes flickered. Max stepped closer, lowering his voice but not the intensity. You saw Tom and Dea getting dragged out, you saw Jeffrey panicking, and you still gave the order. Pat's expression broke a little. I was going to be locked in with them if I didn't comply, it wasn't in my hands. That's what you're telling yourself, Max said. Pat looked down now, voice quieter. You think I don't know how it looked. Max didn't soften. I think you chose compliance over people. A long silence filled the room. Then Pat whispered, I didn't want to lose everything. Max nodded once, slow and cold. Tom and Dea were losing everything while you decided that. That hit her visibly. Her shoulders dropped. I know, she said. From the hallway, the distant echo of movement and paperwork and orders being carried out continued, systems still running even as the people inside them were breaking apart. Pat finally looked up again. What happens now, she asked. Max didn't answer right away. Then he said, now you stop pretending it was just orders. Pat's voice came out quieter now, less controlled than before. I'm going to get Josh and Linda out of foster care, she said. I'll fix that part. Max didn't relax. Jeffrey first. Pat shook her head. Jeffrey is being moved to a different group home. Max's eyes narrowed instantly. You're still moving him. Pat lifted her hands slightly, defensive. It's not my decision alone anymore. It's a conflict of interest for me to directly oversee him because I'm his grandmother and I own part of the licensed facility network. Max stepped closer. So you're still inside the system, just not holding the pen. Pat looked away. Max's voice dropped sharper. Do you even know where he is right now? Pat hesitated. That hesitation said everything. No, she admitted. The room went still. Max stared at her for a long moment. You lost track of him, he said slowly, after everything tonight. Pat's voice cracked slightly. He's in transit with APS supervision, that's all I was told. Max turned his head slightly, like he was trying not to explode. That's not safety, he said, that's disappearance with paperwork. Pat finally looked at him again, eyes tired and strained. I'm trying to repair what I can, she said. I'm going to get Josh and Linda out. I'm going to stabilize placements where I still have authority. Max didn't respond immediately. Then he said, and Jeffrey. Pat hesitated again, longer this time. I don't know yet, she admitted. Max's expression hardened. Then you're not fixing anything, he said quietly. You're just rearranging who gets hurt first. Pat didn't answer. Because for once, she didn't have one that would hold up anymore. Pat stood there for a moment, visibly drained. The authority she'd been carrying all night finally cracked. Max, she said quietly, you're right. The room went still. Max didn't look satisfied. He just watched her carefully, waiting to see if she meant it or if it was just exhaustion talking. Pat exhaled slower this time. I tried to follow procedure, she admitted. I told myself it would protect people, but tonight it didn't. Her voice tightened slightly. It tore them apart. A long silence followed. Then Max spoke, more controlled now. So what are you going to do about it? Pat looked up. I'm going to start by revering what I can, she said. Josh and Linda first, immediate review, emergency release if possible. Max nodded once, still cautious, and Jeffrey. Pat hesitated, but this time she didn't dodge it. I'm going to find him, she said, personally, not through APS, not through paperwork chains. That landed differently. Max studied her face for a moment. Why should I believe that now, he asked. Pat's voice was quieter but steady. Because I don't have the luxury of pretending I didn't see what happened in that house anymore. A beat. Then she added, and because if I don't fix this, it will keep happening. For the first time, Max didn't immediately argue. He just nodded once. Then start moving, he said. Max didn't move right away. He just stared at the floor for a second, like he was deciding how honest he could afford to be. Even though my brother Sam is the cause of all of this, he said finally, I'm going to look for him. Pat's head lifted slightly. Why? Max looked up. Because Jeffrey is family to you, he said. Sam is family to me. That hit the room in a different way than anything else that night. Not anger, not procedure. Just reality. Pat's expression tightened. Max, you don't owe him that. Max gave a short, tired breath. Yeah, I do. He stepped closer to the table, palms briefly pressing against it like he was grounding himself. He didn't start this whole system, Max said, but he learned how to move inside it better than anyone else, and now people are getting hurt because of it. Pat shook her head slightly. You're going after him alone. Max didn't answer immediately. Then I'm going after the truth. If Sam is part of this, directly or indirectly, I need to know how deep it goes. A pause. Pat's voice softened a little. And if it destroys what's left of your relationship with him. Max finally met her eyes. That already happened, he said. Silence settled again, heavier this time but more honest than before. Pat slowly nodded. Then we do this properly, she said. No more shortcuts, no more pressure decisions, we document everything, we trace every placement, every order, every hand that touched it. Max gave a faint, humorless nod. And Jeffrey. Pat didn't hesitate this time. We find him first, she said, before anyone else decides where his life goes next. Sam woke slowly to the sound of a television playing somewhere down the hall. Not the sharp noise of an office. Not the controlled silence of administration buildings. A group home. For a few seconds he just stared at the ceiling, disoriented. Plain white tiles, dim morning light, the faint smell of disinfectant and cafeteria coffee drifting through the vents. Then memory hit him. The mayor. The investigation. The placement order. Sam sat up sharply in the narrow bed, breathing harder. The movement made the wheelchair parked beside him creak softly. A staff member immediately appeared in the open doorway. Oh good, the woman said carefully, you're awake. Sam stared at her. Where am I? Lakeview Transitional Living Center. The words landed like a punch. Sam looked around the room again. Small dresser. Safety rails. Medication chart clipped near the door. Scheduled routine board on the wall. He knew this setup better than most people alive. Because he had helped design systems like it. The staff member kept her voice neutral. Breakfast starts in 30 minutes. We'll also need to complete intake orientation today. Sam laughed once under his breath. Not because anything was funny. Because he finally understood what everyone else had felt. The woman frowned slightly. Mr. Turner. Sam looked at her quietly. Do they know who I am here? She hesitated. We were informed you previously worked in placement administration. That's not what I asked. The woman shifted awkwardly. Some staff recognize your name. Sam leaned back slowly into the pillow again. Outside his partially open door, he could hear residents talking, wheelchairs moving across tile floors, someone arguing about morning meds. Normal group home sounds. Sounds he had stopped hearing as human a long time ago. A resident rolled past his doorway and glanced inside. "You knew?" the man asked casually. Sam looked at him for a second. "Yeah." The resident nodded like that explained everything. "First week sucks," he said before continuing down the hall. Sam sat there silently after that. For the first time in years, there were no staff reporting to him. No calls being routed through him. No authority. Just schedules. Locked doors. And waiting for someone else to decide what happened next. Sam looked around the unfamiliar room again, unease slowly building in his chest. The walls were pale blue, the window overlooked a fenced courtyard. Somewhere nearby, a call bell kept chiming every few minutes. He frowned. "Where am I?" The nurse checking his intake chart glanced up. "You're in New Jersey," she answered. Sam blinked once. "What?" "Hudson Regional Support Living," she clarified, "just outside Hoboken." That got his full attention. "No," Sam said immediately, "I worked in Georgia." The nurse gave a small shrug. "Interstate emergency placement transfer." Sam stared at her. "They moved me across state lines." "You were classified as a conflict risk administrative case," she replied professionally. "Temporary relocation prevents local interference during investigation." Sam leaned back slowly in the bed, stunned silent for a moment. Then he laughed quietly to himself again. Not amused. Just realizing how completely the system had turned around on him. The nurse continued writing on her clipboard. "You'll meet your case coordinator later today. There's also a psychiatric evaluation scheduled tomorrow morning." Sam's jaw tightened instantly. "I don't need psych. That's standard intake procedure." He looked toward the hallway where residents moved past in wheelchairs and walkers, staff gently redirecting people toward breakfast. A routine. A monitored life. Exactly the kind of environment he once signed people into with a few strokes of a pen. The nurse finally looked at him directly. "You should probably know," she said carefully. "Some residents here know your name already." Sam's expression hardened slightly. "That's supposed to worry me." "No," she replied honestly, "but it might change how people look at you." Sam looked away toward the window. Outside, gray morning clouds hung over the New Jersey skyline. Far from Georgia. Far from control. Far from the systems he used to command. The nurse adjusted the clipboard in her hands, then hesitated near the doorway. "There's something else you should know," she said carefully. Sam looked up. Most of the recent residents transferred here came from Georgia. His expression changed instantly. The nurse continued cautiously, "Emergency overflow placements after the enforcement actions." Sam sat very still now. "You may know some people." The room suddenly felt smaller. Sam's eyes shifted toward the hallway again, where distant voices echoed against tile floors and fluorescent lights. Residents from Georgia. People pulled from homes. Group homes. Facilities. Cases. Some of them probably signed by him. The nurse seemed uncomfortable now. "Administration thought it was better to tell you ahead of time." Sam asked quietly, "Do they know I'm here?" "A few do." That answer landed hard. Before Sam could respond, a wheelchair rolled slowly past his open doorway. An older man glanced inside casually. Then froze. His eyes widened immediately. "Sam." Sam recognized him almost instantly. "Derek." Former resident from a South Georgia placement center. A man Sam had transferred 3 times in 2 years because facilities kept losing funding. Derek stared at him in disbelief. "No way," he muttered. The hallway got quieter. Another resident looked over. Then another. Recognition spread slowly. Not panic. Not shouting. Just people realizing the man who used to control where they slept now lived in the room beside theirs. Derek rolled closer to the doorway carefully. "You work here?" he asked. Sam answered honestly. "No." Derek looked him over once. Then at the bed. The intake bracelet. The wheelchair beside him. An understanding crossed his face. "Oh," Derek said softly. A long silence followed. Finally Derek gave a small nod. "First week sucks," he said quietly before rolling away down the hall. The exact same words the other resident had said earlier. but now they carried a completely different weight. The hallway outside Sam's room buzzed with morning activity until the sound of a familiar power chair motor echoed across the floor. Sam looked toward the doorway, then froze. Jeffrey rolled into view slowly, wearing a dark hoodie over soft lounge clothes, exhaustion written all over his face. For a second neither of them spoke. Then Jeffrey let out a hollow laugh. "Ha," he said bitterly, "they got you too." Sam stared at him in complete disbelief. "Jeffrey." Jeffrey stopped his chair in the doorway. "Don't act surprised." Sam looked genuinely confused now. "What is going on?" Jeffrey blinked at him. "Seriously?" "Yes, seriously." Jeffrey's eyes narrowed. "The new law," he snapped, "the one you push through everybody, the one tearing families apart." Sam's expression changed instantly. "What?" Jeffrey laughed again, harsher this time. "Oh, come on. I didn't pass any law. You expect me to believe that?" "Yes." Jeffrey pointed at him angrily. "People are getting ripped from their homes because of this. Tom and Dea got arrested, Josh and Linda got sent to CPS, I got dragged into this place." Sam looked horrified. "Why would they arrest Tom and Dea?" Jeffrey stared at him. "You really don't know." Sam shook his head slowly. "Jeffrey, I swear to God I don't." Jeffrey's voice dropped. "Everybody said this was your system." Sam looked down at his own intake bracelet for a moment. Then back up. "Jeffrey," he said quietly, "on my life I didn't know this was happening." The sincerity in his voice made Jeffrey hesitate for the first time. Not trust, but uncertainty. Sam gestured weakly around the room. "If I controlled any of this," he said bitterly, "do you really think I'd be here?" Jeffrey looked at the tiny room. The intake paperwork. The locked medication cabinet. The state-issued wristband. And for the first time since arriving, his anger faltered slightly. "Then what the hell is happening?" he whispered. Sam leaned back slowly, looking more tired than powerful now. "I think," he said quietly, "someone built something bigger than either of us understood." Sam sat back against the thin pillow, staring at the ceiling for a long moment before speaking again. "Someone was using my identity," he said quietly. Jeffrey frowned immediately. "What?" Sam looked back at him, exhausted and serious in a way Jeffrey had never seen before. "I created placement systems," Sam admitted. "Policies, oversight models, intake structures, but this," he gestured weakly toward the hallway outside, "mass removals, family arrests, forced overflow transfers." He shook his head. "I would never let it go this far." Jeffrey crossed his arms defensively. "That's convenient. I know how it sounds." "Yeah," Jeffrey snapped, "because everybody thinks you're behind this." Sam's jaw tightened slightly. "Somebody used my name," he said, "or my authority, maybe old credentials, maybe old contacts, but this escalation," he looked directly at Jeffrey, "I didn't order it." Jeffrey stared at him, trying to decide whether he believed any of it. "You really expect me to think you had no clue?" Sam was quiet for a second. Then he answered honestly. "I knew people were using my systems after I lost direct control," he admitted. "I just thought it was smaller, isolated. I didn't realize it had turned into this." The hallway outside buzzed with movement again, staff calling residents toward breakfast, medication carts rolling across tile. Jeffrey looked around bitterly. "Well, congratulations," he muttered. "Your ideas became cages." That one landed. Sam didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. He just nodded once. "Yeah," he said softly, "looks like they did." Jeffrey's anger faltered again seeing that reaction. Not because he trusted Sam, but because guilty people usually fought harder than this. Sam rubbed his face tiredly. "If someone expanded those laws using my identity or connections," he said slowly, "then whoever did it knew exactly how to make the system obey without asking questions." Jeffrey looked uneasy now. "You think this was planned?" Sam's expression darkened. "I think," he said carefully, "somebody figured out fear moves faster than ethics." Sam looked down at his hands for a long moment before speaking again. "If I really did this," he said quietly, "why would I place myself in here?" Jeffrey stayed silent. Sam gave a bitter laugh. After what your Uncle Ben did to me, why would I ever willingly come back to a place like this? Jeffrey frowned immediately. Ben. Sam nodded slowly. He met me in a facility almost exactly like this one when I was younger. The room went quiet except for the distant hum of the hallway lights. Sam's voice stayed low and controlled, but there was something raw underneath it now. He changed my name, Sam said, told everyone I needed restructuring. Jeffrey stared at him. Sam continued without looking up. If I needed help changing clothes, they made female staff do it. Didn't matter what I said. Jeffrey's expression shifted from confusion to horror. They forced that. Sam nodded once. They said it was for my emotional adjustment. Jeffrey swallowed hard. And the surgery rumors. Sam finally looked at him directly. Yeah, he said quietly, bottom surgery consultations. Jeffrey froze. Sam leaned back slowly in the bed again. I refused, he added quickly, but once systems start labeling you incapable of informed decisions, everything gets dangerous. The words hung heavily between them. Jeffrey looked shaken now, not just angry anymore. That's why you built all those placement systems, he asked quietly. Sam closed his eyes briefly. At first, he admitted, I thought if I understood the system well enough, nobody could ever use it on me again. Jeffrey whispered, but then it turned into this. Sam opened his eyes again and looked around the tiny group home room. The locked cabinets. The schedules. The intake bracelet still around his wrist. Yeah, he said softly, and now I'm right back inside it. A male nurse appeared in the doorway holding a folded stack of towels and fresh clothes. Jeffrey, he said gently, we need you back in your room so I can help get you into the shower. Jeffrey immediately looked annoyed. Can I finish talking first? 10 minutes, the nurse replied, then hygiene routine. Jeffrey muttered under his breath but slowly turned his power chair slightly. The nurse then looked toward Sam. And Sam, we reviewed your intake file. Sam's expression flattened instantly. The nurse continued carefully, professionally. A female aide has been assigned to assist with your personal care needs. Jeffrey looked toward Sam automatically. Sam just nodded once. I know. The nurse hesitated like he expected resistance. There were specific notes regarding prior behavioral escalations with male staff involvement during hygiene assistance. Sam gave a hollow little laugh. Yeah, he said quietly, that follows me everywhere. The nurse didn't seem judgmental, just uncomfortable with how practiced the wording sounded. We'll try to keep staffing consistent, he said, less stress that way. Sam nodded again without argument. Jeffrey watched him carefully now. Earlier, hearing Sam talk about his past had cracked something open, not trust exactly but understanding. And now seeing Sam react so automatically to institutional routines made him seem less like the powerful man everyone feared. And more like someone who had spent years surviving systems himself. The nurse turned back toward Jeffrey. You ready? Jeffrey sighed dramatically. Do I have a choice? Not really. Jeffrey groaned softly. Figures. As the nurse stepped aside for Jeffrey's chair, Sam suddenly spoke quietly. Jeffrey. Jeffrey paused near the doorway. Sam looked at him seriously. If someone really used my name to expand this system, then getting out won't fix it. Jeffrey frowned slightly. What do you mean? Sam's eyes shifted toward the hallway outside. It means there are probably a lot more people trapped in this than just us. A soft knock came at Sam's partially open door before a woman stepped inside carrying hygiene supplies and folded towels. Hi, she said gently, I'm Sohn. Sam looked up from the bed. Sohn glanced down at the chart in her hands, then back at him. Trans, she asked carefully. Sam gave a tired half shrug. Kinda. Sohn frowned slightly, confused. Your file mentioned the Ben and Sam case. Sam's expression darkened immediately. Yeah. Sohn quickly realized she touched something painful. Oh, sorry, she said softly, I was confused. Sam looked away toward the window. I can't forget it, he admitted quietly. The room fell silent for a second. Then Sohn set the towels down calmly. Okay, she said gently, then we don't have to talk about it. Sam looked back at her, surprised by how simple the response was. Sohn gave a small nod toward the bathroom doorway. I'll just help you shower and get settled in. No judgment. No interrogation. Just routine care. Sam sat there for a moment, visibly tense like he was waiting for the situation to become humiliating somehow. But Sohn simply adjusted the shower chair setup professionally. You can tell me what you're comfortable doing independently, she said. We go at your pace. That almost seemed to throw Sam off more than hostility would have. After years of systems treating him like a problem to process, simple kindness felt unfamiliar. Outside in the hallway, Jeffrey rolled slowly past the open doorway in his power chair on the way back to his room. He glanced in briefly. Sam looked exhausted. Not dangerous. Not powerful. Just tired. Sam sat quietly on the edge of the bed while Sohn adjusted the shower chair and laid out clean clothes. After a long silence, he finally spoke. Thanks. Sohn glanced back at him. For what? Sam rubbed his hands together awkwardly. For not making this more awkward than it already is. Sohn leaned lightly against the counter, listening. This is usually the main issue, Sam admitted quietly. People either stare, overreact, ask questions, or act like I'm dangerous or broken. Sohn shook her head gently. You're just a person who needs help right now. Sam let out a small breath through his nose, almost a laugh. Yeah, he said softly, you just helped, no judgment. Sohn gave a small shrug like it was the simplest thing in the world. That's kind of the job. But Sam could tell she meant it beyond professionalism. For someone who spent years inside systems where every interaction felt like an evaluation, the absence of judgment felt strange. Outside the room, the hallway remained loud with carts rolling and staff checking residents. Inside the room, though, things finally felt quiet. Not fixed. Not safe yet. But quiet. Soon nodded toward the bathroom. You ready? Sam hesitated for a second, then nodded once. Yeah. And for the first time since waking up in the group home, he followed someone without immediately expecting it to become a fight. The staff member returned a little later with a tray balanced carefully in his hands. Dinner, medications, and a bottle of water sat neatly arranged, a small cup of dessert too. He set it down beside Jeffrey's bed without rushing. Then, like earlier, he didn't push conversation, just followed the routine. He turned on the TV, letting a familiar cartoon play softly in the background to make the room feel less empty. Jeffrey sat there watching it, still tense, still unsure what was happening next. The staff checked the schedule sheet clipped to the end of the bed. All right, he said gently, let's get you settled. He helped adjust Jeffrey into a more comfortable position, making sure everything was within reach. Calm, methodical care, no pressure, no judgment. Try a few bites when you're ready, he added. Jeffrey muttered, I'm not hungry. The nurse who had been assisting earlier stepped into the doorway at that moment, hearing him. She kept her tone steady, not argumentative. I saw your care plan from your previous home, she said. It says you need assistance with feeding. Jeffrey frowned, I don't need that. You've had episodes where you don't eat enough, she replied gently. If intake drops too low, they'll consider a feeding tube for medical safety. That made Jeffrey go still. A G-tube, he asked quietly. Jeffrey shifted in his bed, still disoriented from everything that had happened that day. The room was quiet now, too quiet compared to the chaos earlier. A staff member finished adjusting his blanket and checked the straps on his chair brakes one last time. Jeffrey frowned. So, are we just gonna ignore what's going on, like why we're here? No answer came. The staff member didn't engage with the question, he simply kept moving through the routine carefully, efficiently. Jeffrey tried again, a little louder. Hey. I asked you something. Still nothing, no argument, no explanation. Just process. The man helped him through everything step by step: shower, clean clothes, soft pajamas, transfer into bed. No judgment, no conversation beyond instructions and safety checks. When it was done, he tucked the blanket up gently. I'll come back with your dinner, the staff member said calmly. Jeffrey stared at him. That's it. The man paused at the door, neutral expression steady. That's it for now, he said. Then he left. The door clicked softly shut behind him. Jeffrey sat still in bed, staring at the wall. No answers, no clarity, just the hum of the building and the feeling that everything outside his room was still moving fast, without him having any control over it. The nurse nodded once. We don't want that either. A pause. So we just need you to eat something tonight. Jeffrey looked at the tray for a long moment. The room felt too quiet again, just the TV humming softly in the background. Finally, he picked up the spoon. Fine, he said under his breath. The nurse gave a small, relieved nod and stepped back out, giving him space. When he was done, the staff member came back in, checked everything, and gently helped him get settled again for the night. Blanket up, lights dimmed, TV off. Routine finished. Good night, Jeffrey, he said quietly. Click. The door closed. Lock engaged. Down the hall, Sam's room was being settled in the same way: calm staff, structured care, familiar routines designed to keep everything stable through the night. Different rooms. Same system. Both of them left in the quiet, trying to understand what tomorrow would look like inside it. The female nurse stepped into Sam's room with a quiet, practiced calm, carrying a small tray of supplies. Vitals are stable, she said as she set things down. We're just setting up your G-tube care for the night. Sam watched her carefully. Do I really need that tonight? It's already in your care plan, she replied gently. We're just following it. She checked the equipment, moving efficiently, then glanced at the chart again. Victoria just confirmed the tube is good for overnight use, she said, mostly to herself while finishing the setup. Sam's eyes narrowed slightly. Victoria. The nurse nodded toward the hallway. Your supervising administrator. A pause. She finished securing everything, then hesitated at the door. Also, she said more quietly, we can't call you Sam right now in documentation or shift communication, policy from administration. They want government-registered names only. Sam let out a slow breath. Right. There was a long silence. Then he said, almost absently, I forgot to change my name back. The nurse looked at him for a moment, not unkindly, just observing the weight behind the words. It's okay, she said softly, we'll use what's on file for now. Sam nodded once, not arguing, not because he agreed, but because arguing didn't change anything in this system. The nurse finished her checks, dimmed the lights slightly and stepped into the hallway. Before closing the door, she added quietly, try to rest tonight. Click. Luck. Silence again. Sam lay there in the dim room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of the facility settling into nighttime routine, doors closing, carts rolling, quiet voices fatting down hallways. And for the first time, he wasn't thinking about control or systems. Just about how quickly names, identities, and decisions could get reduced to paperwork once you were inside them. The next morning, the hallway lights in the group home were still dim when a staff member stopped outside the room. Victoria and Jeffrey, she said calmly, glancing at her clipboard, the head nurse wants to see you. Jeffrey looked up from his bed, already tense. Why? No answer came. Just the same practiced routine as always. A few minutes later, another nurse approached the room. There's someone who wants to speak with you both, she said. Wait here, I'll get him. Jeffrey exchanged a wary look with Sam before sitting back, uneasy. Sam stayed quiet. Soon, the nurse returned with a man walking behind her. He stepped into the room slowly, like he already knew exactly what he was walking into. His eyes landed on Sam first. Victoria, the man said softly. Sam's expression tightened immediately. Then the man shifted his attention slightly, voice shaking just a little. Did you miss Daddy Ben? The room went still. Jeffrey looked between them, confused and unsettled. Sam didn't move at first. Then quietly. Ben. The man exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for years. You killed the wrong person, he said, voice low. You always thought it ended with the system, but it didn't. Sam's eyes hardened. You did this. A beat of silence. The man nodded once. Yes, he admitted, Victoria. Jeffrey suddenly spoke up, voice sharp. What is going on here? But neither of them answered him right away. The tension in the room wasn't about the present anymore. It was about history. And whatever had been done under names, systems, and identities that were now starting to collide in the same place. Sam's expression stayed locked, serious in a way Jeffrey hadn't seen before. "Jeffrey, you met your Uncle Ben," Sam said quietly. Jeffrey frowned immediately, trying to process it. "Are you sure?" Sam didn't hesitate this time. "Yes," he said firmly, "I'm damn sure." The room went still. Jeffrey shook his head slightly. "That doesn't make sense, I would remember that." Sam looked at him steadily. "Not if it was framed differently," he said. "Not if you were told a different name or a different role or a different reason for why you were there." Jeffrey's expression tightened. "What are you saying?" Sam took a slow breath. "I'm saying the same pattern I went through." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "It might not have started with me." Jeffrey stared at him. "You think I was involved in this too?" "No," Sam said quickly. "I think someone around your family's history had access to places like this a long time ago." Jeffrey's voice dropped. "Uncle Ben." Sam nodded once. "And I think," he added more quietly, "he didn't just affect me." A long silence stretched between them. Jeffrey looked down at his hands, unsettled now in a different way, not just fear of the system, but confusion about how far back it all might go. "So what do we do?" he asked finally. Sam looked toward the hallway where staff moved past with routine normalcy, unaware of the conversation happening inside the room. "We start asking questions that nobody wanted answered before," he said. Ben stood there for a moment, looking between Sam and Jeffrey like he was making a decision he'd already rehearsed in his head. "I will check both of you out," he said firmly, "and you two are going to live with me." Jeffrey immediately shook his head. "No." Sam's expression hardened. "That's not happening." Ben didn't flinch. "You don't understand what you're dealing with here." Jeffrey snapped back. "We understand enough. You show up, make claims, and act like you can just take people out of state care like it's nothing." Sam cut in, voice controlled but sharp. "You don't have legal authority over either of us." Ben stepped closer to the bed. "Authority isn't the point." That made the room go still. Jeffrey glanced at Sam, unsettled now. "What does that mean?" Sam didn't take his eyes off Ben. "It means he's not talking about procedure." Ben exhaled slowly, like he was getting frustrated. "I'm talking about protection," he said. "You both think you're safe here, but you're inside a system that doesn't understand what it's handling." Jeffrey scoffed bitterly. "Neither do you." Ben's gaze shifted briefly to Jeffrey. "Maybe," he admitted, "but I understand enough to know when people are being moved around without the full truth." Sam's jaw tightened. "And you think removing us fixes that?" Ben shook his head. "It stabilizes you." Jeffrey let out a sharp laugh. "That sounds exactly like every other system here." Silence fell again. Sam finally spoke, quieter now. "If you try to take us," he said, "it won't end the way you think." Ben met his eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Sam didn't blink. "That's what everyone says before they do." The tension held there, no movement, no agreement, just three people in a locked room with completely different versions of what protection meant. Ben straightened slightly, trying to regain control of the situation. "I am the president of this home," he said firmly, "so yes, I can take you out of the group home." Jeffrey frowned immediately. "That's not how any of this works." Sam's expression turned cold. "You're not staff, you're not APS, and you're definitely not a court order." Ben's jaw tightened. "Titles don't matter as much as access." That made Jeffrey uneasy. "Access to what?" Ben looked between them. "To decisions," he said. "To records, to who gets moved, who gets reviewed, and who gets released." Sam leaned forward slightly. "So you've been influencing placements." Ben didn't deny it right away. That pause said enough. Jeffrey's voice sharpened. "So all of this, everything happening to people." Ben cut in quickly. "Is not what you think it is." Sam shook his head. "That's exactly what people say when they're caught inside it." Ben's tone dropped. "I'm trying to fix what's broken." Jeffrey stared at him. "By taking us out of state care." "Yes," Ben said. Sam immediately replied, "Without legal authorization." Ben stepped closer to the bed. "Legal systems are already involved and failing." Jeffrey shook his head. "That doesn't make you the solution." A long silence followed. Ben's expression shifted, less confident now, more frustrated. "I didn't come here to argue," he said. "I came to get you both out before this escalates further." Sam answered quietly, "It already has." And for the first time, Ben didn't have a quick response to that. Two men entered without warning, moving fast and practiced like they had done this before. "Hands off, hey," Jeffrey shouted as one of them moved behind his chair. Sam immediately tensed, "Don't touch me." It didn't matter. In seconds, both chairs were secured, straps tightened around the frames and restraints locking the wheels in place. Not rough enough to injure but firm enough that neither could move freely. Jeffrey pulled against it. "This is kidnapping." Sam's voice was sharp and controlled. "This is illegal." Ben appeared at the doorway, already in motion, watching everything like he was running out of time. "I told you I'd handle this," Ben said quickly. Jeffrey snapped, "You are not handling anything." Sam looked at Ben coldly. "Where are you taking us?" Ben hesitated for half a second. "Then somewhere safer than here." They were guided out of the building and toward a plain white van parked near the curb. The doors were already open. The moment they were loaded inside, straps were secured again, wheelchair locks, safety harness points, everything tightened down for transport. Jeffrey's breathing quickened. "I don't consent to this." No one answered. Sam looked out through the van window, jaw tight. "If this is about protection, you're doing it wrong." Ben climbed into the driver's seat. For a moment, he didn't start the engine. He just sat there gripping the wheel. Then he finally spoke, almost quietly to himself. "I don't have another option." The engine started. The van pulled away from the group home, leaving the building behind in silence. No explanation, no destination shared, only the road ahead and uncertainty on both sides of the locked doors inside. Sam leaned back as far as the restraints allowed, staring at Ben through the van's divider. "Kidnapping me again," he said flatly. "Get something new, Ben." Jeffrey shot him a look, again. Sam didn't answer right away, his eyes stayed on Ben. Ben's grip tightened on the wheel. "This isn't kidnapping." Sam let out a short, humorless breath. "You literally just put me in a locked van without consent." "It's protective transport," Ben said quickly. Jeffrey snapped, "That's what they all say." Sam nodded slightly. "Yeah, that's the script." The van hit a slight bump in the road, making the restraints creak softly against the chair frames. Ben glanced in the rearview mirror. "You both don't understand what's happening around you." Sam's tone stayed steady. "Then explain it properly. No force, no vans, no secrecy." A long silence filled the vehicle except for the engine. Jeffrey added quietly, "And maybe start with why you think you get to decide where we go." Ben didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the road. Finally he said, "Because if I don't move you, someone else will." Sam's expression hardened. "That's not an answer." Jeffrey leaned back slightly, frustrated and tense. "That sounds like a threat, not protection." The van continued forward, unknown destination ahead, no agreement behind them, just conflicting claims of safety, control, and fear all trapped in the same moving space. Sam leaned back as far as the restraints allowed, staring at Ben through the van's divider. "Kidnapping me again," he said flatly. "Get something new, Ben." Jeffrey shot him a look, again. Sam didn't answer right away, his eyes stayed on Ben. Ben's grip tightened on the wheel. "This isn't kidnapping." Sam let out a short, humorless breath. "You literally just put me in a locked van without consent." "It's protective transport," Ben said quickly. Jeffrey snapped, "That's what they all say." Sam nodded slightly. "Yeah, that's the script." The van hit a slight bump in the road, making the restraints creak softly against the chair frames. Ben glanced in the rearview mirror. "You both don't understand what's happening around you." Sam's tone stayed steady. "Then explain it properly. No force, no vans, no secrecy." A long silence filled the vehicle except for the engine. Jeffrey added quietly, "And maybe start with why you think you get to decide where we go." Ben didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed on the road. Finally he said, "Because if I don't move you, someone else will." Sam's expression hardened. "That's not an answer." Jeffrey leaned back slightly, frustrated and tense. "That sounds like a threat, not protection." The van continued forward, unknown destination ahead, no agreement behind them, just conflicting claims of safety, control, and fear all trapped in the same moving space. Ben's voice stayed flat as he drove, eyes fixed on the road. Both families think you two are dead, he said, so there's no worries there like last time. The words landed inside the van like a physical impact. Jeffrey went still. What did you just say? Sam's head snapped toward Ben immediately. Say that again. Ben didn't slow down. It's controlled, it's cleaner this way, no interference, no chasing, no. No, Sam cut in sharply, stop talking. Jeffrey's voice rose, you faked our deaths. Ben tightened his grip on the wheel. You were being tracked. The only way to move you without escalation was to remove you from the system's attention. Sam's expression darkened, so you erased us. I protected you, Ben corrected. Jeffrey laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. You don't get to call that protection. Sam leaned forward against his restraints, voice low and controlled but furious now. Do you understand what you've done? Ben finally glanced back in the mirror. I understand I kept you from being pulled back into places you couldn't survive. Sam shook his head slightly. No, you cut off every safety net we had. Jeffrey's breathing quickened. My family is going to think I'm dead. Ben's tone softened slightly but not enough. They think you're gone, not dead, it reduces pursuit. Sam snapped, that's not a difference that matters. Silence filled the van except for the engine. Jeffrey stared out the window now, voice quieter, shaken. So we just disappear, he said, that's your solution. Ben didn't answer immediately. Sam did. That's not a solution, he said coldly, that's control wearing a different mask. The van kept moving forward, but inside it, trust had already collapsed further than the road ahead could fix. Jeffrey stared at Sam like the words had finally snapped something in his brain. You're my uncle, he said, voice rising. This is crazy. Sam gave a short, tired laugh, no humor in it, just disbelief at how far everything had spiraled. Yeah, Sam said quietly, and you think that's the weird part. Jeffrey shook his head hard. I didn't even know you existed a week ago. Sam looked at him for a moment, then glanced toward Ben in the front seat. That's the point, Sam said. A lot of things you weren't told aren't accidents. Jeffrey frowned, still processing. So what, my whole family history is just, what, hidden stuff and systems and people getting moved around? Sam's expression tightened slightly, something like that. Jeffrey let out a frustrated breath. This is insane. Sam leaned back against the restraints again, calmer now but serious. This isn't the start, Jeffrey, he said. This is you finally seeing it. Jeffrey looked at him sharply. Seeing what? Sam met his eyes. Everything that got buried before you were ever part of it. Jeffrey shook his head again. No, no way I would have known. Sam's voice dropped slightly. You just did, he said. A heavy silence filled the van for a moment, just the road noise and the tension between them. Jeffrey finally spoke again, quieter this time. So what now? Sam looked forward, then back at him. Now we figure out who's actually moving people like pieces, he said, and why it keeps circling back to all of us. Ben tapped a number into the van's dashboard phone and waited. A man answered after 2 rings. Will speaking. Ben kept his eyes on the road. You have the plane tickets. Will answered immediately. 4 total, 2 for us and 2 for them. Jeffrey's head jerked up. Plane tickets. Sam's expression darkened instantly. No, he muttered. Ben ignored him. Good, keep the route quiet. The call ended. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Sam leaned back slowly in his chair restraints, staring at the van ceiling. I am reliving things that I really didn't want to relive, he said quietly. Jeffrey looked over at him. What does that mean? Sam let out a slow breath. It means secret transport, he said. New names, moving state to state, being told it's for your own safety while nobody tells you where you're going. Jeffrey went quiet. Sam continued, voice flatter now. The last time this happened to me, I stopped feeling like a person after a while. I became paperwork. Ben's hands tightened on the steering wheel again. That's not what this is. Sam shot back immediately, then stopped, making it look exactly the same. Silence filled the van. Jeffrey looked between both men, overwhelmed. So what, he asked softly, we're just disappearing onto a plane now. Ben finally answered. Only until things calm down. Sam laughed once under his breath. That's what they told me the first time too. Ben tried to lighten his tone as the van continued down the highway. Look, he said, glancing back briefly, let's just get to the UK for now. You'll both have big cribs, privacy, space, you'll love it. Jeffrey stared at him in disbelief. You think this sounds normal? Ben sighed, I'm trying to keep you safe. Sam immediately replied, by moving us to another country under fake death reports. Ben gripped the wheel tighter, temporary disappearance is sometimes necessary. Jeffrey shook his head hard, no, witness protection is temporary, this is just weird. Ben tried again, you'll have freedom there, better care, no APS, no state interference. Sam's expression stayed cold. And total dependence on you, he said. That shut Ben up for a second. Jeffrey frowned, wait, he's right. Ben looked frustrated now, you're both acting like I'm the enemy. Sam answered quietly, because you removed our ability to choose. The van fell silent again, except for the sound of tires against pavement. Jeffrey looked out the window, overwhelmed. A week ago, he muttered, I thought my biggest problem was Sam controlling group homes. Sam gave a tired half-laugh beside him. And now we're apparently being smuggled to the UK by your uncle. Jeffrey buried his face briefly in his hands. This family is insane. 11 hours later, cold rain tapped against the van windows as it rolled through narrow streets lined with old brick buildings and glowing street lamps. Jeffrey blinked awake slowly, disoriented from the flight and exhaustion. Where, he mumbled. Ben glanced back from the front seat, UK. Sam let out a tired breath beside him, no kidding. The van turned through large iron gates and onto a long private driveway. Jeffrey looked out the window as massive stone buildings came into view. What is this? It's safe, Ben answered. That wasn't really an answer. The estate looked less like a house and more like an old private medical campus converted into luxury housing. Security gates, cameras, staff moving quietly under covered walkways. Jeffrey frowned immediately, this looks like another institution. Ben parked the van carefully near the entrance. It isn't, he said, you'll have private suites. Sam muttered under his breath, fancy cages are still cages. Ben ignored that and got out to open the rear doors. Cold air rushed inside instantly. Jeffrey shivered slightly while staff approached, not aggressively, just organized and prepared. One woman with an accent smiled politely. Welcome, she said, we've prepared accessible rooms for both of you. Jeffrey looked at Sam nervously. Sam's expression stayed unreadable. As they were wheeled inside, Jeffrey noticed something immediately. No locked hallways. No overhead paging. No residents lined up in common areas. It felt quieter than the New Jersey group home. Too quiet. Ben walked beside them. You'll rest tonight, he said, tomorrow we talk. Sam looked over sharply, no more secrets tomorrow. Ben nodded once. Agreed. Jeffrey leaned back in his chair, exhausted beyond words. Everything from home, the arrests, APS, the group home, the fake deaths, the flight across the ocean, felt unreal now. And yet here they were. In another country. Following another man promising safety. With no real idea whether they had escaped something. Or simply entered a larger version of it. Ben stood near the fireplace of the quiet UK estate, rain tapping softly against the tall windows behind him. Sam, he said carefully, I know you don't believe me. Sam sat in his chair near the doorway, arms crossed tightly. You're right, he answered. Ben nodded once like he expected that. But I'm not living here with you. That made Jeffrey look up immediately, then who are you really? Ben hesitated. Then finally answered. I had the funding coming in. Sam frowned slightly, funding from where? Ben looked exhausted suddenly, older than before. Private donors, advocacy groups, former placement networks, people trying to move residents out quietly before the system locked down harder. Jeffrey blinked, then why here? Ben walked slowly toward the window. Because I'm trying to get as many people out of those New Jersey group homes as possible and get them rerouted somewhere safer. Sam immediately snapped back by faking deaths. Ben turned around sharply, I didn't fake yours. That made the room go still. Jeffrey stared at him, what? Ben pointed directly at Sam. The same person who stole Sam's identity may have pushed those death notices too. Sam's expression darkened instantly. Maybe, Ben added quieter. Jeffrey looked between them, overwhelmed again. So wait, someone stole Sam's identity, expanded the system, moved people around, and now people think we're dead. Ben nodded once grimly. Yes. Sam's voice dropped lower. And you still thought kidnapping us was the smart option. Ben rubbed his face tiredly. I thought if I got you out first, we'd have time to figure the rest out. Jeffrey shook his head slowly. This keeps getting worse every time somebody explains it. Nobody argued with that. The room fell quiet again except for the rain outside and the distant sound of staff moving somewhere deeper in the building. Finally, Sam asked the question sitting underneath everything. Who benefits from erasing people like us? Ben looked at him for a long moment before answering. That, he said quietly, is exactly what I've been trying to find out. Sam looked at Ben for a long moment, exhaustion and suspicion mixing together in his expression. Ben, he said quietly, please don't lie to me. The room went silent again. Ben's shoulders dropped slightly, some of the defensiveness finally leaving him. I'm on my meds, he said honestly. I know we've had our issues in the past, I know I hurt you. Sam didn't respond. Ben continued anyway. And I regret it now. Jeffrey stayed quiet, watching both of them carefully. Ben looked directly at Sam this time. But I'm being 100% real with you. Sam's jaw tightened slightly. That's hard to believe coming from you. I know. Ben didn't fight the accusation, that alone felt unusual. Rain continued tapping against the windows, while the fire crackled softly in the background. Ben slowly sat down across from them, suddenly looking less like the man in control and more like someone exhausted from holding too much together. When I saw your name attached to those transfers, he admitted quietly, I thought someone was either framing you or using systems you built after you lost control of them. Sam looked down briefly. In the death reports, Jeffrey asked. Ben shook his head. Those appeared after I started moving people out. Jeffrey frowned, so somebody noticed. Yes. A heavy silence followed. Sam finally looked back at Ben. You really regret what happened back then? Ben answered immediately this time. Every day. Sam's expression didn't soften much, but some of the anger drained out of it. Not forgiveness. Just exhaustion. Jeffrey looked between them again and muttered under his breath, this family seriously needs therapy. Unexpectedly, Ben laughed once. Even Sam cracked the faintest smile. For the first time since the van ride, the room didn't feel like a hostage situation. Just three damaged people sitting inside a mess none of them fully understood anymore. Sam didn't relax. Ben, what now? He asked again, slower this time. Ben exhaled and leaned forward, hands clasped. This place knows what I'm doing, he said. I'll take out 2 people each week from the New Jersey group homes and bring them here. I'll also email families and contact their relatives directly so they know where people are. Jeffrey frowned immediately. What about the Georgia law? Ben nodded once like he'd already accounted for it. I have lawyers on that, he said. Multiple jurisdictions, emergency placement loopholes, protective transfer statutes. We're not ignoring it, we're working through it. Sam's eyes narrowed slightly. You're talking about people like their logistics again. Ben looked at him directly. I'm talking about getting people out of unsafe placements. Jeffrey shook his head, but you're still moving people without them choosing it. Ben hesitated for a fraction of a second. I'm prioritizing survival first, he said. Consent matters but not more than preventing harm. That made Sam's expression harden. That's exactly how systems like this justify themselves, Sam said quietly. Ben didn't argue right away. Instead, he said something more measured. Then help me fix it the right way, he said, because right now I'm the only one actively pulling people out. Jeffrey looked between them. So what, you're building your own version of the system? Ben shook his head. I'm trying to dismantle the worst parts of it from the inside. Sam leaned back slightly, tired but focused. And if people don't want to be moved, he asked. Ben paused. Then we talk to them, he said, properly, not forcefully. That was the first answer all night that didn't immediately escalate the tension. But it didn't fully settle it either. Sam still didn't trust him. Jeffrey still didn't understand him. and Ben still looked like someone carrying too much responsibility alone.